The Spear That Shaped a Continent: How One Persian Cavalryman Sealed the Christian Fate of Europe. Note: this essay draws upon the historical framework referenced from Peter Adamson's History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps, synthesizing it with established historical scholarship on Julian's reign, the Roman-Persian Wars, and the development of late antique religion. Key historical sources include Ammianus Marcellinus' contemporary account, modern analyses by scholars such as G.W. Bowersock, Julian the Apostate, and thematic explorations in works like The Last Pagan Emperor by H.C. Teitler, The Fateful Moment, Samarra, June the 26th, 363 CE. On a sweltering afternoon in late June 363 CE, the meticulously planned Persian campaign of Roman Emperor Julian collapsed into chaos. During a disorderly retreat from the fortress city of Ctesiphon, Julian's rear guard faced relentless harassment from elite Sasanian Savaran cavalry. According to the historian Ammianus Marcellinus, an eyewitness to the campaign, Julian, impetuous and neglecting to don his full armor, rushed into the fray to rally his troops. In the blinding dust of combat, a kontos, Persian cavalry lance, pierced his lower abdomen. The anonymous Persian cavalryman who wielded that spear could not have known his action would terminate one of history's most consequential religious counter-revolutions. Julian, known to posterity as the Apostate for rejecting his Christian upbringing, died from his wounds the following night. His death created an immediate succession crisis that stranded the Roman army deep in hostile territory. The philosopher emperor and his grand project. Julian was no ordinary emperor. A nephew of Constantine the Great, he received an exceptional education in Greek philosophy and rhetoric, developing a profound devotion to Hellenic religion and Neoplatonic thought. As philosopher Peter Adamson notes in his History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps, Julian saw himself as a philosophical reformer, a philosopher king in the Platonic mold, tasked with healing Rome's spiritual sickness. By the time he assumed sole power in 361 CE, Christianity had enjoyed decades of imperial favor since Constantine's conversion. Julian viewed this not merely as a theological shift, but as a cultural catastrophe that severed Rome from its intellectual and spiritual roots. Upon taking the throne, Julian launched a sophisticated, multi-pronged effort to reverse Christianity's advance and restore what he called Hellenism. His methods were subtle compared to earlier persecutions. Cultural marginalization: he issued an edict forbidding Christians from teaching classical literature, grammar and rhetoric, arguing that those who rejected the gods of Homer and Hesiod had no right to explain their texts. This aimed to break the Christian monopoly on education. Institutional restoration: he restored pagan temples and their tax privileges, returning confiscated property while removing state funding from Christian churches. Philanthropic competition: he established a parallel pagan charitable system to match Christian networks that cared for the poor and travelers. Intellectual revival: he wrote philosophical works promoting a theurgic Neoplatonism and attempted to organize paganism into a structured, hierarchical church-like institution with himself as Pontifex Maximus. Julian understood that simply persecuting Christians would create martyrs and strengthen their resolve. His strategy was instead to make Christianity culturally irrelevant and socially disadvantageous over generations. The Persian Gambit: why military victory mattered. Julian's invasion of Persia in 363 CE was not merely an imperial expansion. It was essential to his religious project. Contemporary historians recognize several strategic motivations. 1. Political legitimacy. A decisive victory against Rome's perennial Eastern rival would cement his authority, marginalizing Christian factions within the military and aristocracy who viewed his pagan restoration with suspicion. 2. Economic foundation. Persian spoils would fund his ambitious temple reconstruction and pagan endowment programs without raising taxes. 3. Symbolic power. conquering the Zoroastrian Sassanids would demonstrate the potency of the rejuvenated Roman gods over both Christianity and another organized imperial religion. Julian assembled an impressive force of approximately 65,000, 95,000 men, one of the largest Roman armies ever fielded in the East. Initial successes saw him advance rapidly into Mesopotamia, winning several engagements. However, after reaching the Persian capital Ctesiphon, he made the fatal decision to burn his supply fleet and march inland without securing his rear. The campaign quickly deteriorated into a harrowing retreat under constant Persian attack, culminating in the skirmish where he received his mortal wound. The immediate aftermath: an empire changes course. The succession following Julian's death unfolded with dramatic speed and profound historical consequence. The army, desperate and stranded, elevated Jovian, a Christian officer of middling rank, to the purple. Jovian's priorities were survival and extrication. To secure safe passage for his beleaguered forces, he signed the Treaty of Dura, one of Rome's most humiliating diplomatic settlements, ceding the strategically vital provinces of Arzanene, Corduene, Zabdicena, and the formidable fortress city of Nisibis to Persia. Once back on Roman soil, Jovian systematically dismantled Julian's religious program. He restored all privileges and properties to the Christian Church. He revoked the ban on Christian teachers of classical literature. He reinstated state funding for Christian institutions. He effectively ended imperial patronage of pagan restoration projects. This abrupt reversal was made permanent by Jovian's successor Valentinian I, and particularly by Theodosius I, who between 380–392 CE made Nicene Christianity the official state religion and actively suppressed pagan worship. The window for a pagan revival had slammed shut in less than a year. The historical crossroads. What if Julian had lived? Historians have long debated the counterfactual scenario of Julian surviving the Persian campaign. This speculation addresses one of the fundamental questions in Western history: was Christianity's ultimate triumph inevitable? Arguments for Christian inevitability. Demographic reality. Despite imperial favor, Christians likely remained a minority during Julian's reign, but they were disproportionately concentrated in cities and among the literate classes who shaped culture. Organizational advantage. The Christian Church possessed a sophisticated hierarchical structure that could withstand imperial pressure, whereas paganism remained locally organized without central doctrine. Theological resilience. The Christian concept of martyrdom and suffering for faith provided psychological resilience against persecution that philosophical paganism lacked. Arguments for a plausible pagan revival. The power of patronage. As Edward Gibbon observed in The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, the religion of the magistrate could become the religion of the people through sustained imperial preference. Julian needed only to establish a dynasty of like-minded successors. Paganism's latent strength. Traditional cults retained stronghold in the countryside and among aristocratic families. Julian's sophisticated synthesis of philosophy and ritual offered intellectual respectability. The contingency of history. As philosopher Peter Adamson's approach suggests, intellectual history often turns on particular individuals and chance events. Julian represented a unique convergence of imperial power, philosophical depth, and religious vision unlikely to recur. Modern scholarship, including analysis by historians like Polymnia Athanasiadi and H.C. Teitler, suggests a middle ground. Julian's project faced significant obstacles but wasn't implausible. His death didn't merely slow pagan restoration, It permanently altered the trajectory by demonstrating the practical risks of opposing Christianity and emboldening Christian factions within the imperial bureaucracy and military. The cavalryman's legacy, ripple effects through European history. The long-term consequences of that spear, thrust in 363 CE, extended far beyond religious policy. 1. The eastern frontier, the loss of Nisibis and other territories, weakened Rome's strategic position in Mesopotamia for centuries, contributing to the escalating Roman-Persian conflicts that would exhaust both empires ahead of the Islamic conquests. 2. Intellectual history. With Christianity's position secured, the great synthesis of Greek philosophy and Christian theology proceeded apace through figures like Augustine of Hippo. This fusion created the intellectual framework for medieval scholasticism and much of Western thought. As Peter Adamson's podcast explores, The Alternative, a world where Neoplatonic paganism remained the dominant intellectual framework, would have produced a profoundly different philosophical tradition. 3. Imperial authority. The circumstances of Julian's death, an emperor dying on campaign without a designated heir, established a dangerous precedent that contributed to the militarization of imperial succession in later centuries. 4. Historical narrative. Christian historians like Gregory of Nazianzus portrayed Julian's death as divine judgment, creating a powerful narrative about God's intervention in history that shaped Christian political theology for a millennium. Conclusion. The weight of a single action. The anonymous Persian cavalryman who struck down Julian the Apostate performed a routine military act with extraordinary historical consequences. He ended the last serious attempt to alter the religious destiny of the Roman Empire and, by extension, Europe. While broad social and demographic forces certainly shaped Christianity's rise, this individual action occurred at a critical juncture when historical alternatives remained genuinely possible. Julian's death ensured that European civilization would develop within a Christian framework, with all that implied for its laws, educational systems, artistic expressions, philosophical preoccupations, and geopolitical divisions. The subsequent Christianization of Europe was not merely a religious transformation, but the foundation of a distinct civilizational identity. That this identity traces back in part to a forgotten soldier on a Mesopotamian battlefield reminds us that history often turns on moments of profound contingency, on the arc of a single spear in the hands of an ordinary man whose name we will never know,